OTAN, Outreach and Technical Assistance Network.
Well, good morning. Thank you all those that were here before me. I was in the wrong room a couple of times, but we are online and it looks like connected via Zoom as well as in person. If you're looking for the Drones for Education session, you're in the right place. If you weren't looking for the Drones for Education, well, we're glad you're here. We want you to stay, invite some friends, bring some more people over. All right. So we do have a bit of a PowerPoint presentation that we'll go through. I will promise you that I'll try to make it as non-boring and PowerPoint-ish as possible, if that's an actual word. Let's share here. There we go. Okay, that's me. All right, so my name is Tonie Smith. My contact information is actually on the end of the slides as well. So at whichever point you want to write down my name, number, email, feel free to give me a call. I do work for the Sweetwater Union High School District in adult CTE education. This is my finishing up my third year as the teacher for the drones program. And our drones program, like we'll get into today, has several components. My background, however, is not in CTE education. Let's see if this is going to advance for me. It doesn't look like it wants to. There we go. Okay, now it's working. All right. My background is actually, I came out of industry. So I was working as a commercial drone pilot for public safety prior to coming into the district. I actually came into the drones course as a guest speaker, and it just happened to be good timing because the actual instructor for the program had had a change in circumstances, had to leave mid-semester, and so when I came in as a guest speaker, they said, "Oh, can you please come back and stay? They're about to post this position." I, at the time, was working as a recruiter. So I was recruiting all over the state for drone as first response programs. You've actually got some. I've used to spend quite a bit of time up here between Santa Monica and Beverly Hills, Redondo Beach. Those were all programs that I was recruiting and hiring drone pilots for, as well as the drone program down in Chula Vista, which is South San Diego, one of the largest departments there in San Diego County. And the challenge that I always had as I was, posting ads and trying to reach into the community to find people to come in and fill what I considered to be very entry level jobs. They were coming in and applying and they were enthused about it, but they didn't qualify in reality. All right, so it was a struggle constantly. Everyone thought that they qualified. Those that love drones, some of them had drones for forever, but there were always key elements of their eligibility that they just didn't have. And the reason was the majority had not received any type of formal education or instruction. They didn't have any professional background or experience, and they didn't even know what that framework looked like. So after I was in that position for a few years, I said, you know what? This is a perfect opportunity. The school that, was hiring, they're right across the bridge from one of my largest departments. I was like, I'll set up a feeder program. If I know what I'm looking for when I'm hiring, why not set up a program that's going to help people with an interest to develop those skills as they come in? So that's what we're going to go through today. So depending on where you're at, how many are educators? Do we have teachers here? Yes. Administration? Administration. Okay, awesome. Others? Just interested parties? Okay. All right, great. Feel free to ask questions as we go through. All right. We will go through a bit of information. You're going to kind of have a bit of our student experience. And I'm going to share some of the challenges that we've run into, or myself that I've run into in reaching my goals with the program. But then I'm also going to share some resources with you at the end. Okay. So this is what I always go back to, the purpose of CTE to integrate core academic knowledge with technical and occupational knowledge to provide students with a pathway to post-secondary education and careers. I love this because I really do feel like it sums up what our purpose is in CTE. Like, how do we bring these adult students that have not maybe even explored the opportunity to find a passion, find an interest in something where they can add to their educational experience and then qualify for a job that's going to earn them something other than minimum wage, right? Which is really the goal. So, how do we do that with drones? Well, some of those academic foundations have to be there. All right. So reading comprehension, math skills to a certain degree, digital literacy, our critical thinking, problem solving abilities, technical skills, and then effective communication. Now, reading this list, you look at it and you go, well, yeah, that makes an employable person, right? But for our teachers, how many of your students are really coming in that they've met their potential in all of those areas? They really haven't, right? And we haven't even gotten into the specifics of the industry requirements yet. So part of, what I find is my opportunity is to be able to help the students relate drones with all of these things. If they can find an area that they're passionate about and have an interest in those things, well, then it's easier to convince them, hey, you should probably take that math course, that you were putting off, or finish your GED, because in reality, you're going to need those essential skills as you move forward. And those skills then are be able to put into practice in any one of these and probably dozens and dozens of other industries. Coming into commercial drone use or commercial use of drones, we have to think about not just the technical skill set, but also what the demand is in the industry. Right now, there is an opportunity for students who just want to pass their FAA certification and they want to be drone pilots. However, that demand is not as strong as it was maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, where all they had to do was have the commercial certification and people were tripping over themselves trying to hire enough pilots because the regulations had changed and companies realized that they needed to have actual certified pilots, which they didn't have, right? So think fires, Commonwealth Edison, PG&E, right? They were all grabbing as many certificated pilots as they could because they needed them for their tower inspections to meet their requirements, all right? But as the years have gone by, all right, the ability to find people who hold a certification, it's there. And companies have found that there was a gap between the drone operator and what they needed as far as an employee who also had an understanding of their industry, the skills that they needed for, their actual work environment. So what I tell my students coming in is they've got to find what it is that they want to do with their drone. They can't just come in and say, "Oh, I can fly a drone." Well, that's great. A kid can go to Best Buy and buy themselves a drone and they can fly a drone. That does not make them employable. What does make them employable? Well, being able to show that they have the background and certification that they needed to qualify to use their drones commercially. So, our first course is designed to help them meet that industry certification requirement. The industry certification is the FAA Part 107 certification. Has anybody heard of that? No? Anyone hold any kind of an FAA certification, pilot or otherwise? No? Okay. So, our course, we do not actually administer the test itself because this test can only be administered by an FAA testing center, which a lot of times they're at airports or pilot training facilities. What we do, however, is we take the framework that the FAA has posted, and it's online. You can go to FAAdronezone.gov, and they'll list out the body of knowledge that the FAA is like, hey, if you know this and you can test out of these topic areas, we're going to give you a commercial certification and allow you to operate in the national airspace for 2 years as a commercial operator. Side note, the interesting little trivia bit, someone could go and if they're really good at testing, they could test out of this and have never touched a drone before. Okay. But as far as the FAA is concerned, they are legally able to operate as a commercial drone operator. Now, as far as the industry is concerned, they don't care how long you've had your Part 107 if you don't know how to fly, if you don't have your accumulated flight hours, or if you don't have a safe, standardized flight practice somehow registered or logged, you're not hireable. Okay, so this is the first part, though. Yes. fadronezone.gov. All one word. And if you search it, yeah, anything that comes up as a .gov, and on that website, you're going to see a link that says become a certificated pilot. They've got several different categories on that website. One is for recreational. You don't want the recreational. The certificated pilot pathway is the one for commercial operations. Another question, yeah. It is. Yep, there's no practical. It's all theoretical. Yep. And you're going to get a little sample of what that's like today. So hopefully you came with your test taking hats on, right, today so that you get an idea of what that involves. It's completely theoretical. It's a knowledge test. It does have a cost, right, to take that test. So what my first course does, and it's a prerequisite for students to participate in any of the other drones courses that we have, they first have to come in and sit through lectures and take tests and turn in assignments in order to go through all of the recommended body of knowledge to be able to pass this test. Okay. Um, they do administer, well, I do administer practice exams as well. They take one every week because part of the challenge that a lot of our students have, if they are not coming from an academic background, test anxiety is a roadblock. Just the thought of taking a test. And then you tell them they're going to go to an FAA pilot facility and sit down in a closed room with a proctor and they're going to be watched and they're going to have to answer 60 questions. It freaks them out, right? And so they don't even know what to do with that. And so it also inhibits their ability to take this test successfully. Our success rate for our program has been very good. Of the 3 years, yes. No, so the test can be taken when they are 14. However, commercial certification is only given when they are 16 and over. So if you have high school students, if you need to administer this in a high school program, high schoolers as well, they could take their commercial certification. And if they wanted to start a business on the side, they could do so in any of the 50 states in the United States. Okay. So yeah, 16 years and older to hold the commercial certification. Okay. All right, so that's the first course. So the first course is test prep. We'll talk about some of the challenges that go along with that here in a bit. Now, the second course is what everyone thinks they're signing up for when they sign up for our drones course. Whoop, let's go back here. All right. They think they're signing up to walk in and that the first day I'm going to put a drone in their hand and we're going to fly around the neighborhood with the drones. That does not happen, right? They do not get to touch a drone in my course until they pass their ground school course and their FAA exam, and then they're able to enroll in the Unmanned Aircraft Systems Operations course. Now, in this course, they learn about drone components, what all of the pieces are, how they interact, their function. We also go through a tactical flight training program. And again, that tactical flight training is what I was using for the police departments, right? So the pilots coming into us had to learn how to operate large, complex, enterprise level drone systems. Okay, not just the toys that they were, flying and doing everything automated with. They really get comfortable using a variety of different drone platforms as well. So not just one brand or two brands. We've got multiple different systems so that they also can get comfortable picking up a new system that they've never used before and saying, okay, well, I understand the components. I understand what I'm looking for. I should be able to figure this out. Because as an emerging technology, there are always new platforms coming out, always new models, always new systems. Students that are intimidated by new technology are going to have a very hard time working in the drone industry, right? So getting them over that fear of, ooh, I've never seen that drone before, right? That's also part of the objectives of this course. I give them a drone, give them a box, here's your checklist. You know the process, you know the components, figure it out. I have one of my students that he laughs because he's been with me the 3 years. He just keeps coming back. I'm like, why? So I put him to work, right? He's my troubleshooter. Student has a question. I say, ask Mauricio. And he's like, yeah, he's like, you guys should be thankful for me. He's like, my first year here, the only thing she would tell me is figure it out. But he did. And when he figured it out, he also figured out that it's something that he's good at. He came out of high school, didn't go to college, was too intimidated to even enroll, thought that there was really nothing that he could study as a career. Well, now he's looking into programs for computer programming, right, and computer science because he's figured out that he's actually a lot better at those things than he ever imagined he could be. Didn't participate in any clubs in high school, right? Was very shy, was enrolled in our dark program as well because he did have some learning challenges. But to see the transformation of not being a confident learner, not being engaged, and not thinking about a potential career path to now he set goals for himself, it's a great thing to see. And all because he learned how to figure things out. He learned that he was much better with technical computer based programming than he actually thought he was. So there's a lot of basic skills incorporated into this second course. But then once they're flying, right? Again, we said just knowing how to fly a drone is not the guarantee for employment. There is a third course. This third course is called Intro to Mission Planning. Our Intro to Mission Planning course takes their certification and now their basic skills and understanding of drone systems, and it puts them into real world working scenarios. So they're given projects. They learn how to use software systems that are common in different industries like construction, mapping, some of those things that they could turn into deliverables, even if they wanted to have drones as a side job, right? They want to work for real estate or they want to go to work for a contractor. They want to create maps. They want to do something else. So all of those, the actual content varies semester to semester because a lot of it depends on what kind of projects I'm asked to help out with, right? What kind of opportunities they are, and also what kind of software is being developed at the time and that comes out. Okay. The other thing that they do learn in this course is semi-autonomous flight planning. Sometimes the courses will be like, it's autonomous. There is no such thing as fully autonomous drone operations yet. All right. Oh, you'll see that buzzword a lot. But what this refers to is they learn how to use software programs where they can go in and either using, GPS coordinates or creating these geo-fenced maps where on the computer they pre-program the flight of the drone, what they want it to do, where they want it to take pictures. And then we take the drones out into the field, they hit a button, and the drone takes off, and they get to watch to see if it actually flies the flight course that they programmed in. Again, a great skill to know and an alternative to actual just manual flight. Most of the industry is moving towards those autonomous flight operations. The drone pilots in the next 5 to 10 years are not going to be the ones that have controllers in their hands. Okay. The industry, the FAA, regulators, they want everything to move towards autonomous management of drone flights. That means that instead of just being comfortable with operating a single drone with a controller, they're going to be looking for those that can monitor drone performance on a computer system on a console. Right? So having an understanding of how this computer and this software system is now giving commands to this piece of equipment that's flying around in the air and performing these duties is also a really valuable skill for them. Okay. Now, as part of the second and the third courses, the thing that you'll see here is this USI Learning Management System certification. USI is the Unmanned Safety Institute. This is an online self-paced curriculum that's offered at accredited universities. So schools that have aviation programs, drone programs, degree programs, a lot of times the instructors are using platforms like this because if they're if you've got educators that don't have a background in the industry, well, how do you teach something about GNSS systems and, sensors and payloads and data links if that's not the instructor's background? The answer is going to be something like USI. After my students come in and they finish ground school, they have the opportunity to then receive, which the school covers, right, the enrollment cost for them to take this USI curriculum. At the end of the curriculum, which the safety level one, it's 5 modules. The curriculum is no joke, right? And I try to tell my students that, and they don't believe me, and then they start it and they come back and they're like, module one is forever long, right? And they're like, well, there's so much and so much information that they had no idea what they were getting themselves into. But I encourage them to finish. And the reason I encourage them to finish is because enterprise level commercial operations, including Zipline, who they're doing like Walmart and Amazon deliveries and medical deliveries, and these companies that internationally are operating in other countries, are coming to USI, taking a look at the content and recognizing that this is what a lot of our non trained pilots are missing, right? They want to have pilots and they want to have people integrated in their operations as well who have an understanding of not just the drone, but the systems that the drone is running on. That's where the USI curriculum is so invaluable. So once the students finish this, it's an actual proctored exam that they take. Our district does have a proctored testing facility that once they complete it online, they'll do the practice exam and then we schedule them to go to the testing facility. They're able to do that for free, right? The district does cover that cost. But that USI certification that they receive then allows them to add themselves to the USI pilot database, meaning that those companies that are coming in and recruiting in different regions of the country have a database of people that have now been certified by USI, that they have the basic understanding and of those technical skills that are needed to operate their drone systems. So it's definitely a hiring advantage, right? So the test itself is not where the cost comes from. The cost comes from the license for the learning platform. So they have, and again, it depends on what the pathway is that you sign up for. It's about, I think, like $1,200 a student for the program that we have, but they have other options as well. Yeah, and they do have different curriculum bases. So, for example, I teach ground school. I have my own ground school curriculum. But again, if you've never taken ground school, you're not pilots, right? You're like, well, how am I supposed to teach this if I don't understand it? USI has a ground school curriculum that's very good. All right. So you could put your students into that and it's just, teacher guided. They have teacher resources and it's going to be priced based on the program that you're using. hmm Yes. No, fully funded. Yeah. It's a combination of things, right? They do we use grants, right? We use grants and different programs that that's what my lovely resource teachers are doing all the time, making sure that we have our equipment, our certifications, our LMS licensing, everything. Yeah, it's funded. So for our students, the only thing that they will have to cover for themselves is the cost of the FAA exam, which is $175. And students that qualify, there is a program. It's for students 23 and under. Name just slipped my mind, but that if they qualify under that program, that they have financial assistance that for some of the students has covered the cost of that exam as well. hmm hmm In my garage. Ah, oh, we shouldn't tell those numbers. No, it's so it's a very scalable program is the thing. When I came into the program, there already was some equipment and some things from the previous instructor, but the previous instructor had come from education, right? But I was able to kind of piece those things together. Aside from my salary, the first thing would be if you don't have an instructor who's familiar with the regulatory framework, you would want to pay for some type of licensing for ground school curriculum. Now, it doesn't have to be USI. There's several other programs out there. If you send me an email, I can send you the links to some that I would recommend, which would range anywhere from 70 to $80 a student up to, probably $1,500 a student, depending on what your requirements would be for your funding. Now, that's just for curriculum. Now, as far as equipment itself, once we get into the second program, you have to think about the fact that when students enroll, they think they're coming in to learn to fly. And as you'll see in a bit, the content of ground school is very rigorous. It's intense. The attrition rate from ground school to the unmanned aircraft operations is huge. I start out some semesters full room, seating room or standing room only, and on the first break, 2 or 3 students don't come back. Okay. And by the second week, I've lost half of the students because when they realize the academic requirement and the rigor that's involved, it's just not for them. And we'll talk about how we cheerlead and we try to keep them engaged. But the reality is, even from an industry standpoint and from an aviation standpoint, aviation's not for everybody, right? So having those smaller groups when we get into the second course, if I have a drone for every 3 students, that's plenty. Because part of what they're doing is working as teams anyway, and it's a learning process. It's not just the flight, it's the logs and the safety checks and the maintenance and them learning to work together as groups. So you can start out with equipment well, if you're starting out with just the basics or coding, these are available, I believe, still through the state of California. This is San Diego-based county. The state will pay for these for students. And these they can use to learn block coding and do pre-programmed stuff. I always tell them they should pay me a commission on this. This is what a lot of the community programs are using for drone racing. So if you see schools or parks and rec centers that are doing, drone racing programs, code drone edu, right? So you can find out on their website, they've got information like that about that. These are a more complex system. This is great for learning components and also learning the programming aspect of it. This unit, which is a drone soccer ball, which we'll talk about later on, they build these, they put them together piece by piece by piece. They tune them using an open source program that's free online. This is about $600 a unit. Some of our enterprise level drones, which they would want to use if they're going to use them for industry, start about $800 a drone. And our most expensive drones are probably like $20,000 a drone. But, if you have one of those and then a variety of other pieces, you can acquire from year to year. Students come in and they're always like, oh, they're afraid. If they've never touched a drone, they think we're going to crash. None of my students have ever crashed. That's the purpose of the formal education because I start them off with pre-inspection and a process to make sure that they're handling these safely, meaning the equipment does not suffer wear and tear. You're not replacing it every year. Before this needs to be replaced because of damage, it's going to be replaced because it's obsolete technology or there's something else that's out that's new. So you really can scale it and budget accordingly. Yeah. Yes. Oh, yeah, I certainly can. Thank you for that reminder. So the question was, of those that start the program, how many actually complete all 3 pieces and graduate, so per se, from the program? Now, for me, completing all 3 sections is not necessarily the requirement to successfully finish. There are exit points after each one of the classes. Right out of ground school, it's an exit point for those that maybe they're already using drones. I've had people come in from Cal Fire. I've had people come in that I had a guy, he's owned a roofing business for years. He'd been using a drone for his business. He just didn't realize that it was required for him to have a certification. So a lot come in, they take the assistance, they get their certification. After ground school, they're out and they're taking that certification back into their job workplace with them, which is fine. That's a success. Those that come in that also want to take the formalized flight training, done that as well. after they complete my flight training, because I still do have a good relationship with the company that does the hiring for the police departments, they're fine with my students coming out of the second course. And as long as I give them the okay, they'll hire them at a department to be a drone first response pilot. So I'm fine with them going out and, using what they have. In fact, I would prefer it. There are those that want a little bit more of a skill set in order to either continue their education or start their own business. If they're going to start their own business, they have to know how to manage data and they have to know how to create deliverables. Those are the students then that are sticking around for the third course and learning the software and then, creating their business plan along the way. So I would say from ground school, the biggest drop rate is from ground school into the second course. That's easily 50% or not, if not more, that don't finish ground school. Of those that finish ground school, I'd say about 80% of them then roll themselves over into the second course. And those that take the second course, same, probably 65 to 70% will follow through and complete the third course as well. Yeah, good question. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Mhm. I'm supposed to be certified, right? Yes. Okay, that's an excellent question. So the question was the ground school that I keep mentioning, is that ground school just like any other pilot would complete, or is it specific to drones? It is ground school. The content itself is based on general aviation. It's tailored to those that are looking to complete their unmanned aircraft certification or their remote pilot certification. So the FAA essentially took the framework of what they've been doing for years with crewed aviation and they just pared it down a bit and they said, okay, well, if drones are going to share the same airspace with all of these other aircraft, helicopters, planes, hot air balloons, well, you need to know the same rules. So we're going to see an example of that later on. There are some differences, however. So there are no instructor certifications required for someone who wants to go in and take their Part 107 exam at the FAA Testing Center. They don't have to have my signature that says, yes, this person completed so many hours of instruction. They can just go in and register and take the test themselves. So although we call it ground school, it doesn't have the exact same framework as general aviation, but that's where it comes from. Yeah, good question. Programs. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Yeah, barely. 9 years old. Yeah. 2016 is the framework. Yeah. Um, Send me a message. There are not. I'd say send me a message. So the question was, and which school are you at? North Valley Occupational. First of all, I think it's awesome that you have an aviation mechanics program. I wish we had one of those. There is a shortage in all things aviation. And because there's a shortage in all things aviation, there is a shortage of instructors because those that can are still doing, and the time that they have is limited. And as you know, the income in the educational field is not always competitive when it comes to working actually in industry itself. So it can be a challenge, but that's where reaching out and networking with those industry partners that you may have is helpful. It was my job. I was supposed to be networking with schools throughout Southern California. And National City popped up. I had never heard of their drone program. I didn't know they had a drone program, but the reason was they didn't have any students that were graduating and getting their certification and applying to my jobs. Um, because I had had such a challenge finding pilots, I was already in the process of developing curriculum because students, they were going to other schools. They're like, yeah, we came from this community college or we took this online course. And they were still coming to me not qualified. That bothered me, right? So it was a personal mission of mine to make sure that students that spent their time and energy and money to come into a program left with something that would make them employable. If you send me a message, all right, I still work closely with people in different areas in industry. And because of that relationship, if you have a position that you're looking to hire an instructor, you may not get one full time. But if you have an opening or an opportunity and have an interest in developing a program that's going to fit the needs of your students, I can help you kind of point you in the direction of some organizations that have some resources. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that, these partnerships help, so USI as well. I'm a USI certified instructor also. So when they have companies either for temporary programs or, a school, like we've got a school that was asking, how do we get drones? So we put together a proposal and whatever the class schedule is, if it's twice a week, USI also has instructors that they'll send out in order to help a school deliver the curriculum and the program until internally you have somebody that can do that for you. Hmm. Yeah, so good questions. Do we have questions online about the three courses before we move in? No, move forward. Okay. Oh, yeah, another question. Sure. Yes. Yeah, so the first course, ground school, that's a prerequisite. No one is able to enroll in the other two courses because, yes, and that was one of the things that I felt it was important to correct. Um, the school, when I came in, they were allowing students to just enroll at whichever point they wanted to. But that's an issue for me because how are you teaching people to fly and they don't have a license to fly, right? You're not helping them towards employment because any of those other skills are useless in the market if they don't have their industry certification. So the industry certification with ground school is prerequisite. They come in, they have to have their 107 before I will even allow them to enroll in any of the other courses. Correct. Yep, absolutely. Yep, it can be a standalone. Yeah, excellent. So now, going back to the question of, well, what is it that we're teaching? I feel like that process itself also helps the students develop some really critical skills, professional skills, soft skills, like getting over things like testing anxiety. We talk about testing strategy. Through this process of putting them through tests all the time, a lot of them, which I'm always so happy about, they do something that they hadn't done in their first 12 years of public schooling or 14 years of schooling. They go and they get screened to see if they have any learning disabilities, or they go and they meet with our dark instructor to see if they can identify their unique, their VABE, their learning proficiency. Because without knowing that, it's very challenging for them to even know how to approach all of the content for ground school. All right. So it's a great way for students to get over that. Well, I'm just not good at learning. I can't do this. I can't learn this. It's too hard. It's too much. This is way harder than anything that I ever had in high school. So we really try to focus on from the beginning, learn as you fail. I said at the beginning that I test my students every week. I do. And I tell them from the first week, these exams have no impact on your grade whatsoever. It's an exercise in learning how to learn and learning how to increase your understanding of a topic that you knew nothing about when you walked in on day one. And once they can kind of, like get that through their brains, then it's not as bad, right? They're like, okay, this doesn't mean I'm failing. It just means out of the 60 questions, I only got 20 right. Well, it's okay. I'll do better next time. And they come back to class and they participate. Next test, they do better. They get 30 out of 60. And they're like, wow, 50%. Like, I'm improving. So they learn to focus on their process and their pathway of learning instead of just on whether or not they are passing or failing. Okay? Now, does everybody have a piece of paper or something to take notes on? It can be your phone, it can be a computer. We're going to give you kind of an experience of what it's like to take one of these tests. Now, the actual test itself, we said, is 60 questions. We're not going to do 60 questions. We won't do that to you. Everybody online as well. Please don't put your answers in the chat. Kind of keep them to yourself until we get to the end, and then we're going to see where we score. Now imagine that you've come into SUAS Ground School, right? SUAS Ground School, small unmanned aircraft systems. It's your first week. You thought you were going to come in and have a whole lot of fun, right? Like video gaming and just fly a drone. And then I set you down in front of a computer and I was like, okay, let's take a test. All right. They are all multiple choice questions. We're going to take 10 multiple choice questions today. They're going to be on screen. I will read them out. When we get through these 10 questions, we'll talk about what you felt as you're going through these questions, and then hopefully it'll help you identify with where your students are as they're going through these. First question. The basic weather minimums for operating an SUAS up to the 400-foot AGL limit are, is it A, 900-foot ceiling and a 3-mile visibility, B, 2,000-foot ceiling and a 1-mile visibility, or C, clear of clouds and a 2-mile visibility? Pick one, take your best guess. Let's go on to question 2. According to 14 CFR Part 107, an SUAS is an unmanned aircraft system weighing, is it A, less than 55 pounds, B, 55 kilograms or less, or C, 55 pounds or less? Practice exam 3 is going to take us to these lovely aeronautical charts that we see. And I know that may be hard to see from where you're at. It's kind of small. But again, we're taking our best guess. The question would be, refer to figure 71, area 1. The floor of the Class E airspace above Georgetown Airport, E36, is at, is it A, the surface, B, 700 feet AGL, or C, 3,823 feet MSL? What's going on there in area 1? Now you understand, right? Absolutely. He said, can we do this in English? We will. The next 7 questions are in English, I promise. ATC authorization is required to fly in which type of airspace? Is it A, Class A, B, and G surface airspace? Is it B, special use and uncontrolled airspace? Or is it C, Class B, C, and D, controlled airspace? Question 5, we're halfway through. Refer to figure 2. If an SUAS weighs 10 pounds, what approximate weight would the SUAS structure be required to support during a 60-degree banked turn while maintaining altitude? Is it A, 10.15 pounds, B, 20 pounds, or C, 60 pounds? And I know that involves a little math, so I'll give you a couple extra seconds there if you're trying to figure that one out. Just like, not necessary, right? Listen, in best guesses, I tell my students the best guesses, if you best guess 42 out of 60, you still pass. A win is a win. Literally, a win is a win in this case. Question 6. A person may not act as a crew member of an SUAS if alcoholic beverages have been consumed by that person within the preceding. Is it A, 8 hours, B, 12 hours, or C, 24 hours? Question 7. While operating at SUAS just south of a controlled airport with authorization, ATC notifies you to stay clear of the runway 6 final approach course. What action should you take to comply with this request? Do we A, stay clear of areas to the west and north of your area of operation? Do we B, stay clear of areas to the east and north of your area of operation? Or C, stay clear of areas to the west and south of your area of operation? And I see you all frantically drawing out our final approach patterns on your papers, so we'll give you a second. Not really. We'll go to the next question. Question 8. What types of fog depend upon wind in order to exist? Is it A, radiation fog and ice fog? Is it B, steam fog and ground fog? Or is it C, advection fog and upslope fog? Or is it D, like all my students said? Who said there was more than one type of fog? Right? The FAA, the aviation weather people, that's who. Number 9, the accurate perception and understanding of all of the risk element factors and conditions is it A, situational awareness? Is it B, judgment? C, aeronautical decision making? That one's a little closer to English, right? A little bit. Absolutely. Hazardous attitudes occur to every pilot at some degree at some time. What are some of these hazardous attitudes? Is it A, poor risk management and lack of stress management? B, anti-authority, impulsivity, macho, resignation, and invulnerability? Or C, poor situational awareness, snap judgments, and a lack of decision-making process? There is no all of the above, I know. All right, that was the last one. Okay, so take a deep breath. So what was going through your head with those? I get quite a few of those. Yeah. She said that she's the student that left at break. Right? But now think about your student body. All right. Think about those that are enrolling, your demographics, your bilingual students. All right. We have a very, very high percentage of our students that English is not their first language. We have a very high percentage of those students that end up finishing this course and do very well. And it gives them the confidence that they need because, as I tell them at the beginning, even native English speakers are challenged by these kinds of questions. The questions themselves, which come from the FAA testing database, I didn't make these up, so don't be mad at me. Okay. These questions are worded specifically to determine how well a student is able to take a limited amount of information, use what they know about regulations, about operational limitations, and about safety, and make the choice of one of these as the best answer. Right? Now, you want to know how you did? There's your answer key. Number 1 was A, number 2 was A, number 3 was C, 4 was C, 5 was B, 6 was A, 7 was A, 8 was C, 9 was A, and number 10 was B. You got 3. Okay, who got more than 3? Anyone got more than 3 right? How many did you get? You got 6. Wow, she's at 50%. What'd you get? You got 6. You got 5. That's impressive. Anyone get more than 6? You got 2. That's all right. 2. Online, do we have anybody that got more than 6 correct? I can't see that, but let's see. And can I tell you that I tell them the same thing? If you get 50% of these questions right on your first test, good for you. You deserve a round of applause, right? Because how much of this information have we studied at this point? 0, right? And that's the point. There's so much out there that we don't know. You have to be comfortable with the learning process. And you have to understand what you don't know in order to be in a mindset to learn and to grow. Students that are extremely uncomfortable with not knowing something That's a challenge in and of itself. Yes. For like in like pre-enrolled students? Okay, so the question was, do we do a CTE orientation specifically for this? We do not. That would be great. Um, I do orientation. The first week of the course is orientation before we get into it because I understand coming into this that when people sign up for this class, it's not what they think they're signing up for. Yeah, it should have. Unfortunately, one of the other challenges I have is that even our administration and our registrar staff, because we've got 5 different adult school sites. They can sign up for any of the CTE courses at any of the sites. Most of the staff have no idea what my course is about either. All right. And so when they come in, first thing we get a syllabus. And we talk about the possibilities, we talk about the industry, I explain the course structure. We go through all of that kind of to kind of warm them up to, is this what you signed up for? You know, are you really looking to get an industry certification? These are the reasons why, and this is why it's going to be hard. But the promise that I make to my students is that as long as they show up and they stick with it, I get them to pass their certification, but their willingness to stick it out and follow through, that's not something I can train into them. They have to be willing, they have to make that commitment, and they have to take that step. And when they do, it's awesome because then they're proud of their accomplishment because they know how hard it was on the first day. And then they come back at times, new semester starts, they'll come into the class and tell the ground school students, don't quit. Right? They're like, stay with it, like, don't leave. Like, you want to finish this because it gets better because it really does. Hmm. Here we get a question over here. Yeah. Hmm. Right. Right. Mhm. Yeah, that's a good question. So for those that are online, the question was, what's the incentive as far as the prospect for employment, and the motivation to keep them in the program so that they have some job prospects coming out? The reality is, not everyone coming out of the program is going to be employed as a drone operator, but that's also something that I tell them up front. But the prospects in the aviation industry are absolutely unlimited. But it does require each one of the students, if that's what they're going to do, that they make a commitment and stick with it. Some of it is going to be that they'll need to go and take some additional education. They can go to our community college where we have some articulation agreements with the college that they can enroll. And if they can finish a degree, or if they can get, a mechanic certification in something, it makes them more employable. Just having the Part 107 certificate itself, unless they are very motivated and able to follow through with being an independent contractor and offering their services, which some do, no one's going to hire them just because they have their 107. They have to have some kind of interest or opportunity that they find in a specific industry using the technology. That interest in additional education and their certification is going to be what makes them a viable candidate. Yes. So I don't have a recommended math and reading level. I will say this, I have some of the students that are coming in that they are dual enrolled. They are in our ESL programs at the same time IET. We have IET support, we've got VABE support, and we have students that are coming in for ground school specifically because it's so content heavy and it's so much new vocabulary. Students, if they don't get it all the first time, they can repeat ground school 3 times if they'd like. And a lot of times, if they are not as proficient in English or if their reading comprehension is not quite there, that's exactly what they'll do. They'll take it, they're being exposed to acronyms, new vocabulary, new concepts. Um, so I don't prevent anyone from enrolling. I encourage students to come in, and even if that's their English practice for the day, that they're looking to improve their technical English comprehension, they can sit in my class all day long. Yes. I do not. I have a resource teacher that my IET teacher that at the beginning of each quarter, we do put everybody through the CASAS testing and the evaluation. And then she sits with those that are, below a certain score. And then they discuss whether or not they're at a proficiency level where they would be able to benefit from the class the first time, or if she should make a recommendation for them to go and focus on their ESL courses first, and then they can come back another semester and enroll. I find that some of my students that when they're testing that way, even if their verbal communication skills in English are just not there because they don't have the opportunity to speak English ever, their reading comprehension is off the charts and they do really well on tests. Yeah. Yes. 9 weeks. 9 weeks. 9 weeks. Yep. So I do it in 9 weeks, and I do it in 9 weeks. It's a fast pace, um, but it also doesn't give them a chance to forget everything that they learned. And so it is not every day. It's twice a week. 4 hours. So it's 7 hours a week. We do 3 hours on the first day, and then it's 4 hours on the second day. So it's a total of 7 class hours a week. But then they're also getting reading assignments outside of class. And again, if you send me an email, I can send you a copy of the syllabus and the breakdown with where everything is at, distributed in those 9 weeks. I don't determine the content. The content I get right from the FA's website. They got a whole list of bullet points, and then I build the actual course materials based on what I know is on those tests in each one of those categories for their test. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly. By the end of that 9 weeks, if they've done their assignments, if their comprehension, their language comprehension is good, if they're asking questions and they're participating, by 9 weeks, they're ready to schedule their tests. Yes, another question. Sure, no problem. Hmm. Yeah, they are because they understand that our program is unique. And how are we doing on time? We've got a little bit left. Okay, good. They are supportive because it's also new to them. It's new to them. The question was, how supportive is my district and administration as far as helping out other schools? It's part of the reason I took the position to begin with. So it was kind of an unstated understanding that my whole reason for being there is to try to outline curriculum that can help teachers that didn't come out of industry to be able to deliver still the value of the programming to their students, because just even as an introduction into technical skills, the drones program is a great way to do that, right? It's popular, the kids love it, even especially for students that maybe are coming out of high school, they don't want to enroll in a 4 year, or they don't have the circumstances to enroll in a 4 year program, but they can still be guided to gain technical skills that are going to perhaps keep them engaged in that professional development process until maybe their circumstances change. So the district is supportive. I'm available. I'm always supportive. That's why I'm here on my day off. I was like, yes, do I want to go talk to teachers? Of course I do, because I do know that there's so much potential for schools that don't have programs like this to incorporate it into their curriculum and be able to benefit students. Yes. No, you don't have to limit questions. We like questions. We got time. Yes. So ground school, they don't touch a drone in ground school. Ground school is all test prep. It's all theoretical. It is, but at the same time, when we're talking about like industry alignment, it's the basics requirement to get a job. So if they're not willing to sit through ground school, then they're not going to get a job with it anyway. Now, one of the things that I do offer the students that have not yet completed that ground school, kind of as an incentive, I run a drone soccer club at the school. Now, drone soccer is open to all of my drone students. So even those that are coming into ground school, if they want to fly something, they can come into Drone Soccer Club and they learn to build a drone, troubleshoot a drone, put it together, and then they fly them in these lovely competitions that we do once a week at the school. So that's kind of how I incentivize them to stay with the program. They don't get to learn the commercial equipment. They don't get to fly with us outdoors. They don't get to go out to projects. But if they come into Drone Soccer Club, they still get to fly these really cool racing drones. Unmanned aircraft systems operations, that's where they learn to fly. No, that one's 18. Yep, 18 weeks, same thing, twice a week we meet. And then that's the first day. We usually do like 3 hours of, lecture instruction, hands-on in the classroom, and then we try to get them out to fly the second day of the week. 7. Yep, all of our classes follow the same district schedule. So each course gets 7 hours a week. Yes. Oh, I've got that for you. So I'll have it. I'll put it up here at the end again so that you have it. Yeah, so you can get it. Yeah, yep. It's on the presentation. So the other thing that I wanted to point out is, we're talking about employability, and what the job prospects are. I'm realistic in the demographic that's coming into my adult schools. There's sometimes a reason that they haven't on their own initiative gone out and started a career or followed through with education that could get them a certification to get a job, a specific industry job. And that's okay too. I still want students to leave with more employable skills than what they had when they came into the program. So one of the things that I do is everything we do for our class, we use Microsoft Teams. Most of the district is using Google Classroom. I don't use Google Classroom, right? Industry in general, people know how to use Google, know how to use Google. All of my students have to learn how to use, and we'll go through it at the beginning. That's part of what we do those first few weeks, depending on their level of digital literacy. But all of the assignments, all of our like message boards, all of our digital notebooks, and the references that I post for them to be able to study for the exam, everything's on Microsoft Teams because they're going to be able to use Microsoft tools then. Any workplace they walk into, they can go, oh, yeah, I can use Microsoft. Yes, question. No, no, no. I love questions. This is perfect. This session, the more questions, the merrier. Sure. They can attend remote. Yep. So the question is, are we 100% in person or remote? I high flex for every lecture for ground school. They can come in to ground school the first day, get their syllabus, get their information, get their student ID and log in. I add them into Teams. If I don't ever see them again in person until the final exam, that is fine with me because they are able to high flex. We have an owl in the classroom, just like this one. All right. And through that owl, every day I come in, I log into Teams. They have a specific channel. It's called our lecture channel. I walk all of the students through the first few times. Hey, if you're sick, we tell them stay home. Don't get everybody else sick, right? If your babysitter canceled, don't miss the class altogether. Log in from home, log in from your phone, log in from vacation, from wherever you're at. And so they are able to log in remotely from their personal devices wherever they're at the entirety of that 9 weeks, with the exception of the final exam. So tracking attendance, I keep attendance. My students in person obviously sign in, but then once everybody's in and I open up the session, I track manually the attendance on my attendance sheet, but I do differentiate between those that are in person and those that are distance learning. Our district just implemented as well that they also want the students self-reporting their attendance. So they created a link to a Google form that at the beginning of every lecture, I log in, I paste the link into the chat. And so now the students themselves from home, they've got to click on it, they got to put in their student ID and say that I went to class this day remotely. Yeah. Yep. So we do check attention. No, don't apologize. But I like the questions because this session is for you guys to be able to ask your questions and get all the information you need. So please, yeah, go ahead with your question. Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Then I got to the point where it said I have to add a service.
Ah, Right. hmm Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. There are a few different areas of Drone Zone. The section where you're actually creating a profile and logging in, that's where you're creating your own dashboard with the FAA, where you're going to be able to keep track of your services and your certifications. Before you actually log in, there are some options of information at the top that you're going to look for. Those drone zone drop down menus are really where you're going to find the information you're looking for. Once you log in, you would log in to the drone zone as a pilot, all right? But at this point, you don't have any certification. You don't have a recreational trust certificate and you don't have your commercial certificate. So you're not going to be able to do much. Correct. Correct. Because that dashboard with the FAA really is just a holding spot for once you do have those certifications. You go in and you tell the FAA, I have this certification. It's also where you register your drones. Most people don't know that. You need a license and registration with an aircraft, just like you do a car. So that's where you register. Yep. You're, you are supposed to have a certification and your drone is supposed to be registered. And that's where it blows people's mind because they come in and they're like, we had no idea these were requirements. And they have been for a few years now. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Yeah. And it's because on that box, or you go to Best Buy, like they're not stopping you from buying it, right? The FAA hasn't done the greatest job of public awareness of what those regulatory changes are. And it's one of the things that I think keeps students in ground school because they're fascinated by how much they just didn't know it even existed related to drones. Every drone that's out there and being flown, no matter where it's being flown, it's regulated. It's regulated airspace. You are supposed to have either a recreational pilot certificate or a commercial operator certificate. There's very specific criteria. Everyone technically should have a commercial operator certificate with the new framework of the regulations, but they've made an exception for recreational operators, people that have been like AMA members, and gone and built airplanes, model airplanes with their fathers and grandfathers for centuries. They're like, what do you mean we need a certificate? They now do. But they're understanding that they're doing it as a hobby or just for fun. So they've made those regulation exceptions for recreational operators. But 2 years ago, 3 years ago, they did implement the requirement that even recreational pilots have to be certified.
some guy standing on the phone and flying around, he should be licensed.
Absolutely. And he's probably not in the United States. And there's an interesting thing that's happening. If you go and you search like FAA fines, those people that you find on YouTube doing all kind of crazy things, the FAA is starting to really kind of pick them out to make like examples of them. FAA fines are no joke. And now that it's been since 2016 that the regulations existed, and now things like well, remote ID, which we'll talk about later, and the requirement for certification are in place. Those fines are coming out more frequently and they're getting bigger. So the guy that hit the super soaker, right, here during the fires, right? Yeah, he has to do restitution. It was like $65,000 of the repair of the aircraft that he crashed into, right? The FAA fines haven't even come out yet, but I'm sure they're going to get him because he was operating beyond visual line of sight. He was operating under a temporary flight restriction because of the fires. There's areas where you're not supposed to even put your drone in the air. He was endangering other aircraft. Like there was so many of the regulations that he violated, and it doesn't matter to the FAA that he didn't know that those were the rules. What the FAA regulations state is that the moment you launch an aircraft into national airspace, and they consider national airspace to be anything from the tips of the blades of grass up, okay? So even in your own backyard, that is all national airspace. They say you assume the responsibilities of the regulations in the United States. People don't know. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And you're like taken to the park, like, hey, we're gonna have fun. Even your backyard is regulated. Yeah. Yes. Absolutely. Yep, everything. Because the FAA doesn't distinguish between it's a toy or it's not a toy. Absolutely. And the thing is, they're considering how much technology has advanced, right? So decades ago, you didn't have the capability of going to Costco and buying a drone that could go much farther than like 20, 30 feet from wherever your remote controller is. This controller has a 6 mile range on it. So people's, tendency, they're excited. They grab a drone, they take it out of the box, they put it in their backyard and they go, see how high and how fast this can go. And they go, whoo, and it shoots itself up in the air. Now, what else is 6 miles up in the air above their backyard? Planes, helicopters, right? So the advancing technology has created an environment where it's a danger to general aviation to not have regulations and limitations on where drones are supposed to operate and how high. No, it does not. So, and that's the great thing about if you have a drone program at your school, the question was, does it apply indoors? FAA only regulates national airspace, which is outside. Most of these educational drones, including the ones that we have here, these are meant to be flown indoors. So as long as you've got a 10-foot ceiling, that's what they're for. Now, the premise of the safety elements of the regulation is still something you should teach to your students because it's the concept of, risk and components and, you can cut your fingers, you can have an accident. All of those things are relevant, but the FAA has nothing to do with what you're doing inside with your drones, only if you're going to fly them outside. Yes. Mhm. So the second and third, not for the entire class, the second class, which is the unmanned systems operations, we do lecture every week because I still have to teach them, I got to teach them about the different radio frequencies. I have to teach them, open up the menus, and we go through how to fill out a checklist. By the end of the second class, I have each one of my students create their own flight operations manual as if they were going to operate as independent contractors and drone pilots. So I give them copies of my forms to use during the class, but the in-person, like in classroom lectures, they can high flex into those as well. If they want their flight time, and that's what they want, that's what they signed up for, right? They motivate themselves and they find a way to get to school the days that we're going to go out and fly. Yep. Yes. Yes. Yep. Uh-huh. So as long as you're operating within the rules, and the question was like, that you put a drone in the air and 3 police cars show up and tell you on the 4th of July you can't fly. That happens to people a lot. And then they're like, oh, well, we don't know why did that happen? How did that happen? When they're learning the rules in ground school, they understand where they can fly, how to fly, and even in controlled airspace, they learn how to get permission from ATC, which is air traffic control, to get a permission, right, digitally through what's called a Lance system. It's an awesome airspace authorization program that everybody should know about, and they don't. When you go onto the drone zone as well, even as recreational pilots, that's one of those links. It says, where can I fly? You're going to download an app like I think Aloft Air Control is listed there, but the FAA actually has a whole list of approved, what they call Lance service providers. These are digital maps that you can get on an app on your phone that when you're going to take your drone out, you take it out, you open the app is going to drop a pin at your location. It's going to tell you if you're okay to fly in that location or if you need special permission from the ATC. It will tell you if there is a flight restriction and you're not supposed to take off at all. It's the information is there, just the awareness of what the tools are and how to get to that information is not. Hmm. It's not on the box, and it's not a requirement for it to be on the box. It will say in your manual in like a 6 font, but right, it's 6 font, right? It'll say, be sure to operate this aircraft in accordance with all federal, local, and state requirements. That's all it says. And that puts the responsibility on you as the user to now know what the rules are or to go out and figure out what the rules are. Now, the other thing that people don't know, and this isn't in my presentation, but since you have a drone and you have a drone, I'll tell you, as of 2021, all drone manufacturers were required to build into their drones this lovely little system called remote ID broadcast into their drones in order for them to be sold in the United States. So if the police were able to show up, that's because without you being able to disable it, every single drone being sold in the United States today is broadcasting its location, its serial number, and where it took off from the minute that it takes off. There it is. They do in high risk areas, or if there's something like an area where you're not supposed to be flying, they don't monitor it all the time. But if somebody reports a drone, law enforcement has the ability to log into the system and go, okay, who is it? Oh, it's there. And this is where it took off from. And then they can dispatch somebody to that location to track down the pilot. Yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay, off the record. I'm not the FAA. I won't tell. So the thing with air traffic controllers, and this is another one of those great opportunities people don't realize, the FAA is always hiring. There's been a shortage of, like we said, everything aviation for a long time. Air traffic control are under scrutiny, and everything FAA ever since, they started with the drones in New Jersey that everybody was freaking out. Those weren't drones in New Jersey, by the way. They're just more people looking up in the sky than usual, right, at night. Um, I feel kind of the same way about air traffic control incidents. Because I've been following air traffic control, you can go on YouTube and you can follow channels where they're broadcasting like ATC incidents and arguments. You hear near misses all the time. I'm also on the FAA Drone Pros. So every year we've got to have these meetings and we go in with general aviation. They have to report to the FAA regional offices every month the incidents and accidents. There have always been incidents and accidents. It's just the ones as of late seem to have been with more commercial craft, and they put them on the news, right? With loss of life, obviously, they're putting them on the news. So there is a need and there is a shortage because air traffic controllers, it's a stressful job. It's a stressful job and it takes a lot, right, for them to get to the proficiency level where they're able to manage traffic. And actually understanding air traffic patterns is part of what our students learn in ground school. Because in order for them to safely operate near airports in areas, rural, urban areas like this, they have to know what the aircraft in the air is doing as well and know how to avoid that traffic. So air traffic control opens up these windows of hiring. They've got one open right now. Anyone who's 31 and under and meets certain qualifications could qualify for that paid training. Those are things that I will then post for my students on our job board on Teams, because again, not all of them are going to have a career and make a living being drone pilots, but being adjacent to the aviation industry, they're now aware of more opportunities that they could fill needs like that. Yes. Every 2 years. However, now you don't have to pay for it every 2 years. When I started, you did. Now, once you pass the exam, you pay for it once. Once you have the certification, there's what's called a recurrency testing. So instead of going back to the FAA testing center, you go online. The FAA has a website. You create a profile. You log in. They retest you online on just whatever the newest regulations are, and it renews your flight privileges for another 2 years. So that's an advantage to students as well. That it's like if they can get past that first testing fee, they've got a certification that would, give them job opportunities anywhere in the United States for forever, as long as they stay current. Yes. The recertification, they're just going to have to sit there in front of the computer and take it as many times as they'd like. But the recertification test is open book and it's like 30 questions. And it really isn't as complicated as the original certification. There's no figures, there's no, hey, this about weather. It's just very basic. These are the safety requirements. Do you still remember this? And these are the newest regulations. Have you read up on this? So that's what it is. But all of these things here, right? So this is one of my favorites. If you scan that QR code, you get a link to my lovely Canva poster. These are all over my classroom. These yet. And the power of yet is that from day one, I want my students to walk in and say, okay, I don't understand this yet. I can't do this yet. I'm not good at this yet. It doesn't work yet. Doesn't make sense yet. And I'm not an expert at this yet. This is one of the ways that we try to instill that change of a mindset for students that's going to help them to grow. Okay, so we put these up, and when they're confused and I see like smoke coming out of their ears and their brains are just like, what in the world, right? I point at one of these and they're like, okay, I got it, right? We don't get it yet. Because it's not just the regulatory framework. They have exposure to all of these different programs and options and things, and that their minds are like constantly giving us new information. But that's what it's like to work in anything tech related. Emerging technology, where the FAA and NASA have plans to expand the integration of the airspace and the use of airspace, flying taxis and delivery drones, all of these things that already exist and they've been actively working towards figuring out how to make that work. Well, those are opportunities and jobs for the future. But they're jobs that students have to be ready for, right? So I do absolutely inundate them with all of these lovely things, all right? And it can be a challenge. These are some of the challenges that I try to attack. Our informed enrollment, that they know what they're getting into when they walk into the course. The financial barriers, some of the students really just don't have that $175 for the testing fee. And then if they're looking to operate on their own, they don't have the purchase fee. Business setup there. Everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a drone pilot. Well, who's going to buy your equipment, right? So working them through how to get through those challenges is important. And then for me, for our class, one of the challenges that I had was convincing the director that I could not train commercial pilots in the courtyard at the school. Like that little 10 by 10 space was not going to cut it, right? That we needed to have a system in place where they could go off site. I can take them to job sites. We can go out to a field where they can actually gain proficiency at a commercial level. So that's something that we've been able to overcome, but it is a consideration. All right. All right, but then there's opportunities. Like I said, we do a lot of collaboration. I can refer them to other courses. Our school also does like advanced manufacturing. They can learn to 3D print. They can do welding programs. We've got digital literacy. So if they discover that they need, to improve their computer skills and those soft skills, them working as a team and being forced to get along even when stress is high is important. And then the community engagement. So when we have industry events, they've had a few conferences in San Diego, some in Las Vegas related to the aviation or drone industry. We take them out and then they're exposed as well. And it's ways for them to network. And so those things also build their interest in the industry. And then, where are we at with time? That was a video on drone soccer. There is one. We participated as the only adult team in the Academic World's Cup drone soccer program last year. So you can look that up on YouTube. It's like a 2-3 minute video, but it gives you an idea of what we're doing when we're teaching them how to build and program these things. But even then, the interaction with those students from, younger ages, they went in all confident, like, oh yeah, we're the only adults, we're gonna win. Yeah, those middle schoolers, like, absolutely wiped the floor with them, right? Because they're kids, right? They've been gaming, they've been doing it longer. They were like, they were a little, their feelings were a little bit hurt, but at the same time, it was a great learning experience for all of them. So those pathways afterwards, I try to encourage them to get into any one of these areas where they're going to be able to use now their confidence in using a technical tool in order to be able to build a career. And I think that's it. And then there's me again. So yeah, definitely reach out if you need. Oh, one more question. Yeah, no, I was gonna say reach out, take a picture of my information, and send me a message if I can help out any way I can. Yeah, sure. hmm So I would say don't put the brakes on everything. Definitely go on Drone Zone and look at the recreational use. Recreational, it'll take you 20 minutes to get your FAA trust certification. You take it, it'll run you through some of the basic rules. You'll take the test, and once you take and pass that test, the FAA will issue you a PDF with your certificate. Print it out, put it in your wallet, and as long as you follow the rules that you learned in that exam, you're good to go. You will need one of the apps downloaded to your phone so that you are aware of like airspace and that you can track any flight restrictions. But the idea of the FAA is not to stop people from using aircraft. They just want them to do it responsibly, right? And with an understanding of what's happening in the airspace. Nope. No, not the app. Yeah, there is no drone manufacturer that actually provides any FAA or air traffic control permissions, you have to go to one of the approved LANC service providers that the FAA has on their website. And they have some specifically for recreational pilots. So when you go on that drone zone site, there'll be a link for where do I fly. It'll take you to a page and it'll show you the features available in all of the apps. All of them are free, right? So download 2 of them. As I tell everybody, put 2 of them on your phone, then you can be sure if one goes out. Yeah, one more question.
Like, it's not that friendly to me.
Yeah.
I chose recreational,
Okay.
and now it says you must have the drone to register before I can do anything else.
You do. So that's why I said you're in the logged in section and you don't need to be. So I'll put this up on the screen in a second. Yeah, you don't need to be in the you don't need to be in the logged in section at all. So I'm going to share this on the screen because yeah, I understand that there's a lot that's there. So I know we are out of time, but I'm going to share the screen here again and show you how this works. Okay. So this is the FAA drone zone, right? So they always have these banners of like the latest information. You can log in, you don't want to log in. You want to use the tools that they've curated. The thing is the FAA website is huge, right? They've got information for all classifications of aircraft. So they created this drone zone page to just give you the information relevant to the use of drones. As a recreational flyer, you just hover over one of these options like this, and it'll tell you learn the rules, take the trust, which is a certification, and if you got more questions, or download the Before You Fly mobile app. And that's the app that's going to show you the airspace permissions. Where we are at with our students that are going into commercial drone use is here, the certificated remote pilots. Learn the rules. They've got the steps to become FAA certified pilots. And all of these resources are clickable. You access all of this information without logging in. Once you log in, that is only when you already have a certificate and then you have a drone that you're registering yourself as a certificated pilot and you're registering your drone. And it's going to issue you your drone's registration number, which has to be put on and displayed on your drone when you fly it. So the FAA issues that for you. And that's how they know it's registered. Yeah, if you've registered it, then you're legal. So if they see a drone and the serial number is coming back, because again, the serial number is transmitting, you don't turn that on, it just is, but they don't have a matched registration number, they know you are operating an unregistered drone in the airspace, and that could be a problem. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so there's a lot to it, right? There's a lot to it. I don't want to discourage anyone from setting up programs. It sounds like a lot, but again, remember this is the industry that I came from, right? It's what I was doing, and so my hope is to be able to share that insight with districts and teachers and students even that it could really be a viable option for them coming in and looking for something different, right? Something different. It's completely attainable, and if it's the right fit, it's a great opportunity, and it's something that I love a whole lot more than sitting in an office. So I wouldn't change it for the world.
I think they probably asked like, what's the total cost?
Mhm.
Talking 100 grand, 200
Mhm.
grand.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think it's that much for a school year. I mean, if you're including salary in that's going to push your cost up. But first of all, you have to know, do you have an instructor who's willing to incorporate drones into their program? You can do it as an add-on or you can do it as a standalone program. There's really a way to incorporate drones into a lot of your different programming that you already have. Once you know the answer to that, then reach out to me and I can make some recommendations as far as, where you can start. Okay. No, you're welcome. Thank you all so much for coming. I appreciate it. Thank you. And thank you to everybody online as well. Send in your questions if you have them.